everybody, it's Margaret, and I'm coming at you with a little something different today. A while back I was contacted to review a knitter's journal, and I thought to myself, well, I've seen those before. I'm not so sure they're actually worth it, but I haven't seen this one, so I'll say yes. So I agreed, and this is what I was sent. Now I have to tell you, oftentimes when I think about keeping a knitter's journal, I first think about Ravelry. And I think, why would you bother having it written, which is something you could lose or run out of room or something like that, when you have a Ravelry and you could save everything digitally? Well, this one changed my mind. And I have seen other ones that look to me like glorified notebooks, but this one's different. So come around here, look over my shoulder, and let's talk about it. Now, right off the bat, something that I love about this is that it is a hardback book. It's tough. It's not just a glorified notebook, so that's pretty impressive as far as the quality goes. Love this rubber band that keeps it shut, and that becomes more important as we go through this book. So let's look at it. We start out, you have a table of contents here, and it is filled with things. Here are resources and references. This is not only filled with things that's important to a knitting designer, but it's also good for those of us who may forget what a term or symbol is. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Here are some standard graphing symbols, things that we'll run across when we look at a knitting graph. We need to know. Or if you're designing, you need to think, how am I going to represent this stitch? You want to use the standard graphics so that everybody will be able to read your pattern with ease. Then you've got things like standard knitting abbreviations on both of these pages, which would be your text versions. And this is so great. Look at this. Yarn fibers. Gives you little dollar signs to indicate their approximate price, but it also tells the attributes of each of these types of yarns that we see on a regular basis in the stores. Knitting designers would find this important because that would help them choose the stitch or give the blocking instructions or whatever, or even sizing can be affected by this. If it wears over time, it kind of stretches. Very important to consider. Then over here we've got yarn weights, and of course that could be good for anyone. And then standard body measurements. Now, a knitwear designer would want this in designing, sizing their patterns. Somebody like me would look at this to kind of help me gauge which size to make for myself or for whomever I'm knitting. Then over here, sweater ease allowances. Now if you've ever sewn anything or knitted anything, you know that you have to allow for ease. You can't just measure your waist and say, oh, that's the size I need to make it. Only if you want it to cling to you. Ease is the thing that helps it hang naturally around you. And then of course, estimated yarn requirements. Who can't benefit from that? How to read a yarn label would be perfect for anybody, of course. And then you've got your favorite yarn sources. Now there are plenty of times when I have run across a bargain site, a great site, that I forgot what the name of it was. I don't know how to get back to it. Well, here would be a great place to record all that wonderful stuff. All in one place, mind you. This is, you just go to your knitting resource, you go to your knitter's journal, and you would be able to refer to that quickly. Now here's some recommended knitting books that she includes, the author does. And by the way, did I even say that? The author is Jane Klein. We'll talk a little bit more about Jane in a minute. Let's get back to this. Now there are plenty of other useful reference and planning pages, like some suggested knitting books and a place to record the ones you already own. A calendar that includes a place for your friends and family's birthdays so you can plan projects for recipients. A needle inventory. I'm telling you, she didn't miss a trick, but I don't want to give away every tiny detail. And here you have some knitting design paper. Now, if you're going to design something, even if it's just a little monogram or something to go on a sweater, you can't use regular graph paper. You must use knitting paper. And the reason why is because the knit stitch is actually a little wider than it is taller, so you need little rectangular shapes rather than the squares that you find in typical graph paper. Now, you could write directly on this, but you know what I would use this for is a pattern. I would make copies of this blank page. I think that would be helpful. But don't worry about losing your copies. I'll show you something in a minute. Then she gives you something called Intarsia design paper. And these are tiny, tiny, tiny little squares, and that's usually because Intarsia requires more room than, say, a regular piece of paper. Or at least that's what I'm guessing. And then we have something here called shadow knitting design paper. Now, what is shadow knitting, you might say?
It's also called illusion knitting, by the way. And it's when you look at your knitting one way, you see something, and then you move, and suddenly a different design becomes apparent. So, for example, in this scarf, if you look at it head on, you're going to get this stripe look. If you ankle it, you're going to see the hearts in it. It can give you a really neat effect, like this sweater, when you're moving. You know, you can you see a plain stripe, and as you move, you begin to see the chevrons become apparent.
Now, check this out. You can't have this on Ravelry, nor do many of these knitting journals have something like this. But it's actually a pocket. It says insert swatch. Now that's important. You need to save your swatch for several reasons. You can also insert the copies. Let's say you copied one of these graph papers for your design. You could just fold it up, tuck it right in here, and you've never lost anything. Now when you turn the page, you've got another swatch pocket here with the same information, but you also get a lot of regular graph paper right here. Now this is not knitting graph paper. I don't know if you've seen the research lately, but people are encouraged these days to take notes on graph paper. Something about organizational linear thinking, blah, 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 blah. I cannot even remember what it is. But for a designer, this comes in handy for your sketching. Let's say you're drawing a neckline and sleeves, and you want to indicate it. You know, okay, I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 squares here. I want it to be 7 squares here, just to help yourself get a visual on what it is you're designing. Now, I'm not a designer. How could this benefit me, or would it? Would it be worth my time? Yes, it would actually, because whenever I do projects, I inevitably have to alter them in some form or fashion. It may be my own personal aesthetic, or it may be the fact that I am a petite, and so regular sizes don't necessarily fit me. For whatever reason, I could put it in there for a certain project that I'm working on. It's important to note that you get a lot of paper per project. And of course, you've got your pockets here. If you're out making notes on a cocktail napkin or whatever, you could bring it home, tuck it in here. Now let's see, you get a good number of projects included. See how you have pockets on either side, and then they're all divided. I love the way they're color-coded. You could just look in your book and say, oh, I remember I'm working right here. Wouldn't that be great? Now, this is pretty cool. It says My Yarn Stash. Now, on Ravelry, there is a place where you can keep track of your entire stash, but you can't put samples of what you have. And here you can attach your samples. Do you see the little holes that they've created? And you can just slide your little sample through there. It has the yarn company, the color, the dye light, the yardage, the number of skeins that you have. So that's pretty handy dandy. And also it could be related to your projects that you are about to design, or one that you're about to work on, in my case. You wouldn't have to put every piece of yarn in your entire stash. Most of us certainly have more than this book allows for. So it would be, I think, related to the projects that you're including within this book. Of course, remember, this is arbitrary. What you want to use it for could be different from what I'm suggesting. Use your own creativity. Here you have an Intarsia knit page, so if you're working with Intarsia, you can keep track of each color that you're working with, including the symbol you want to use to indicate the different yarns. And a good needle gauge back here with the measuring for, you know, when you're gauging your work. And then you have a zip folder back here, a little zip pocket to keep any incidentals in. I mean, it is a win-win. Now, Christmas is approaching, so I'm thinking what an excellent gift this would be for a knitter, right? Perfect for somebody like me, but perfect for a knitwear designer as well. But I have one more idea for you, and that would be for an heirloom. For example, wouldn't it be great to have received something like this from your grandmother, something that she may have kept over the years and different projects that she did and passed down to you? That would be terrific. And there's an added bonus in here. Let me show you. My Knit History. It's just after the design project notes section, and it gives you 4 pages for you to put your knit history. It suggests to place photos and notes from your past knitting projects on these pages. Now, of course, that would be maybe your completed I don't know what it would be. It could be anything, actually, but wouldn't it be neat if you prepared something like this to pass down to a fellow knitter in your family, that you could put some of your favorite projects in there, whether you designed them or not. Or just maybe a picture of yourself when you were knitting when you were small or something like that. I don't know, but I thought this was tremendous. And there's lots of different knitting journals out here, but like I said, I've seen them and I wasn't impressed. And I thought, okay, reserve judgment until you get this one in your hands. And I give it 2 thumbs up.
You get this really cool book. Well, Amazon, of course, because it is a book, and I'll put a link to this page in the description box below just for handy reference. But I would also encourage you to go to Jane, who's the author, Jane's website, and it's called Jane's Knitting Kits. And you can purchase it from here too if you would rather. But while we're here, let's look at what kind of kits Jane's Knitting Kits offers. Jane's site is terrific. If you click this little symbol right here, you'll get all the choices of what's going on this site. Naturally, you could shop for her kits. Every kit comes with the pattern, of course, and the yarn that you would need. Generally, it's a wool or wool blend from Universal Yarns. Looks great to me, and I think the prices are extremely reasonable for that yarn and the pattern. Look, $30 here, $29.95. I really do think it's reasonably priced. But looking back over here, you'll see she's got a blog for updated information. Free patterns are available. You can learn more about Jane. And Helping Hands is where you go for tutorial information, which is really neat. And if you have a young person in your life, be sure to check out the kit called Gray Skies No More Hand Knitting Kit for $30. This would be an excellent Christmas gift. It's designed for children in mind who are just learning to knit. And if I remember correctly, I read somewhere this was actually knitted by a child. So you can see she chose yarn that really appeals to young children. I just think this was very, very clever. And unlike the other kits, needles are included. See right here, size number 10 needles are included. Usually the needles do not come with the adult kits, but since this is a learn how to knit kit, then you get the needles with it.
So many thanks to Jane's Knitting Kits for giving me the opportunity to look at this book, because I want to tell you, I would not have chosen this book had it not come to me in my hands for me to see. So I hope that I'm giving you an overview if you're looking for something like this for your own idea or for a purchase for a gift. I like this one, and I wish you could actually feel it. It's very substantial, high quality, and again, like I said, 2 thumbs up.